Let's get underway.
All right, welcome everyone to Underway. We have an exciting episode for you today. We are joined by John McDaniel of PitchGrid podcast to go over the quarterfinal matchups of the Club World Cup and where the MLS teams stand right now on the brink of the transfer window opening up. John, thanks for joining me today. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, man. Greatly
Yeah,
appreciate it.
of course. So the podcast you host is half American football and half what I guess the rest of the world would call football. But today we're going to go focus just on the latter, probably because if I talk about the Atlanta Falcons too long, I'll start crying. But let's jump right into the Club World Cup cash grab. Once every MLS team got eliminated, I stopped covering for what it really is. But I think even if it's a crash grab, doesn't mean it's not entertaining. So what are your thoughts overall on the tournament so far? And then I guess we can get
I,
into how you think the MLS teams fared in it.
I guess I would say that it was kind of a group stage that we kind of expected to kind of be boring, right? I mean, we didn't really know what to expect really, and then the round of 16 did not disappoint. There were a lot of good matches in the round of 16. My Inter Miami getting crushed by PSG, I think we all kind of expected. Um, I mean, goodness, PSG
Yeah.
won the Champions League for goodness sake.
Yeah.
But the Sounders, I was really hoping they would do well. I really was, but it's a huge tournament for like the South American and North American teams to put their stamp on this, and North America really didn't do anything much, but South America is doing some great stuff. So I'm really excited to see that. Um, yeah, I think it's gone overall better than I think some people expected, especially after the group stage. I mean, of course, we all seen the news about how the seats have been empty and all that. But I think now with the bigger games, the bigger teams coming into the top, we're probably going to see more and more stadiums getting filled more. I think
Yeah.
wasn't Orlando for Manchester City, Al Hilal rather full actually. So I would say it's probably going to get better. The atmospheres are only going to get better as this tournament goes on.
Yeah, I think, empty stadiums, whether, it's tough being the first thing, so a lot of people don't know what to expect, number one. And number two, I don't know, people are scared to go to stadiums right now. So that definitely plays into it, especially with more
For
South
sure.
American teams. I do think wherever Real Madrid goes, it's going to be a full stadium, and we saw that in
Hmm.
Charlotte. Um, Overall, I think the product is definitely great. It's very exciting seeing all these teams, face off against each other when they normally don't. Uh,
Hmm.
from the fan perspective, I think DAZN could definitely be better. I don't know how your your experience is watching it, but the amount of times that the app has crashed on me, or there's a little ticking number doing its best, like little 90s DVD thing,
Yeah,
it's incredibly
dude, it's
annoying.
weird.
Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, I was looking for what teams will be competitive. Obviously, I was hoping that MLS would get results that didn't necessarily play out
Right.
like I hoped. And for Auckland City to do something, and then they got put 10 on by Bayern.
Yeah.
I think the most exciting thing that I saw was them tying Boca Juniors, which
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes.
If you're asking
Cinema.
me. But I think this could be a good precursor for what the or for the what the World Cup will look like. Obviously, bigger crowds, but like I said, MLS, they did their best. Seattle was placed into the toughest group. It would have been
Hmm.
impossible for them to basically get a result against anybody. They did score more than LAFC, which I thought was interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
just running down their games, they lost 2-1 to Botafogo, and even Botafogo's players were saying that they're surprised by the level that Seattle Sounders were playing up to. 3-1 loss to Atletico Madrid, which of course, and then 2-0 to PSG. who were less embarrassed than both Inters in Milan and Miami. How did you see Seattle playing out? I mean, obviously, they were drawn into the hardest group of the entire
Right.
tournament. They didn't have Jordan Morris. They've always been plagued by injuries. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, it's not an embarrassing result. And I think that's all that we kind of hope
No.
for.
Yeah, I don't think Seattle could have expected much more. And honestly, I think they really acquitted themselves quite well, even despite, all the pre-tournament drama they kind of built up for themselves a bit. And I don't know. To me, it feels like they acquitted themselves well. They tried their best to be competitive, which, you can't say that about all the teams,
Yeah.
like LAFC. um, but you know, uh, they tried, and I think they actually made MLS look decent
Mhm.
compared to like Inter Miami against PSG, for example. Like, you know,
Yeah.
anyone only allowing 2 goals from MLS against PSG, that's quite the feat. So,
Yeah.
especially when MLS is considered a pretty inferior league when and you look at everywhere else. But um,
Yeah.
I
And then I was just gonna say LAFC. I'm an LAFC fan, so I was hoping they would do better than what they did.
yeah,
They played that $10 million game against Club America, which I think that was probably one of the more exciting wins I've seen LAFC pull out. And it was always going to be a tough
right,
road to get there. I mean, could have been different if they were hosting and they had the 32-52 behind them, but the nature of what happened with FIFA and them trying to get Club America in,
yeah,
they ended
that was a
up
whole mess.
just being based in Atlanta. But yeah, their results, it was 2-0 to Chelsea, which I thought Denny Bouanga had multiple times to tie it up himself, which is basically a theme of this season is the team is relying on Denny Bouanga to
Yeah,
make them competitive. He hasn't had the greatest season so far, so when Under at the time and Giroud and I mean they even brought in Del Rosa and he was basically non-existent. And then the great Nathan Ordaz gets knocked out in the first game. So it's just wild to see how lackluster it was. But yeah, Chelsea, it was 2-0. If it would have been 1-1, I think I would have counted that as a win.
oh,
Tunis was
absolutely.
incredibly tough to watch. A 1-0 draw and or a 1-0 loss, and then Flamingo 1-1 draw when it should not have been. What did you see from LAFC, and do you think this is kind of indicative of their season, or do you think that they'll be able to turn it around now that Giroud isn't going to be there?
I would say it has been pretty indicative this entire season. Like you said, Denny Bouanga is kind of the talisman they are expecting to carry them to great heights. Um, but I mean, the most competitive they were was probably against Chelsea, and I mean, I don't know, that was better than I expected. I expected Chelsea to be a little better than that,
Yeah,
and
I
probably
I
the worst
thought the
Chelsea has
fact
looked
that
this entire tournament.
yeah, I thought the fact that they just didn't get blown out of the water uh was pretty nice and just in its own right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're going up against a Champions League team now in Chelsea, you can pat yourself on the back and say you actually competed and did well. I I feel like though, like you said, the Tunisian Flamingo games were kind of frustrating though for LAFC. I'm sure as a fan you were rather frustrated because you have the good result against Chelsea and then you kind of just fall flat on your face after that, and you think, oh, we could maybe get some results against teams that aren't top tier competition. And Brazilian teams have shown that they are actually one of the more underrated teams this tournament, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
And they've had the fans show out too, which is great.
yeah, for sure, and it's a huge. Um, it's huge to see this kind of that kind of support, and for Americans to see that kind of support. we talk about like y'all have the 32-52 and in KC or the Bailey and F in Cincinnati. But like nothing beats a good like Brazilian crowd or a good European crowd, and I think we're kind of seeing firsthand. There's actually people starting to get interested in. Oh, this
Hmm.
actually looks intriguing. So, but yeah, LAFC. I feel like people expected more of them this year, and I feel like they haven't
Yeah.
delivered, which is frustrating because y'all have been on the cusp for so long, ever since that MLS Cup against Union. I feel like it's been kind of just weirdly declining, but yet not declining
Yeah,
because you're
it's it's
always at the
it's
top.
almost it's almost like they're like scared to go full tilt in one direction. And look, like they're always going to be turning the roster over. John Thorrington, pretty notorious for if it's not working, we're going to get somebody else in who will work in the system. And I'm not one of these dolo out guys. I think Trundle is a good coach. Do I have problems with his style sometimes? Of course, because it's not as exciting
Hmm.
as it was under Bob Bradley. But
Right.
I think that they just put all their eggs in the Antoine Griezmann basket, and he looked rightfully so at a coach who's not going to be there, and Giroud not having the time that he needed to, and frankly, Hugo Lloris, while at times playing like he's done his entire career, but overall, just like you could tell that the age is hitting him. Like there's certain moments where I'm like watching the
Hmm.
game, I'm just like, you could die for that. You don't have to be a statue in gold the entire time. But I don't want this to turn
Right.
into a therapy session of my fandom. Um, so let's go on to Inter Miami because I'll just end up getting sad all over again. They got the furthest, making out of the group
Yeah.
stage and into the round of the 16. To make it there, they drew Al Ali 0-0. They won 2-1 against Porto, drew 2-2 against Palmeiras, and then, like we said, put up that goose egg against PSG, losing 4-0. Messi's up there in age. I mean, but it's still Messi, obviously. In order to build out this team, though, they skipped out considerably on the defense. I mean, Ustari's
Hmm.
been better than I expected. I think a lot of people expected. I was very surprised that Calendar didn't make the switch back before the tournament. He did
Same.
okay up until that PSG game. But Falcone and Thomas Aviles, like, I think they've just shown time and time again they're not up to the task. Whether that's because of the system that they're playing in, which, everyone talks about it, they're basically already two men down because Messi just roams, and that's what he's going to do, and that's how you win. But in doing so, you have to rely on everybody else being a
Hmm.
Sergio Busquets, and there's only one. They just haven't gotten the reinforcements they needed to balance that to be better.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're on Twitter, but MLS Moves nagging as always about how Don Garber needs to be fired
Yeah.
because of this result, and I think that's asinine.
Hmm.
I don't understand why he's so down on a league that he chooses to cover. But none of these
Yeah.
teams were going to make a serious
Agreed.
run. I think we can all agree to that. Even as a LAFC fan, I'm as long as we don't get embarrassed, I'm cool with it.
Hmm.
What did you see from Inter Miami? How do you think that they can get better in this transfer window? Do you think Brian Rodriguez will be the answer to the prayers?
Oh goodness. Uh, Porto was a huge win. I think we can all say that was probably the biggest statement win by any of the MLS clubs, maybe besides Club America, which our struggles against Liga MX are real. But I feel like Porto getting the win against Porto was a huge statement saying, okay, we can compete, but in certain ways. And when we get against like PSG, who know how to attack, who have some of the best players in the world, you're not going to be able to compete. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you're gonna hold on to a win like Porto for a while, and I feel like yes, they need to address the defense. They obviously just want the attack to be, we will outscore you, and we'll make sure that you can't keep up with us. Basically, I mean that's kind of how they did it last year, I think. And it kind of was their downfall against Atlanta United when they were dragged down to a style that wasn't that
Mm-hmm.
because everyone wants to try to play Miami style, and I think that backfires.
Yeah.
Um, so if you can drag them down to another level where you're playing a possession heavy style and you're keeping it away from them, you're making sure you put numbers behind the ball and you dig in, it can work. We've seen it work. It's just if your defense is stout enough and it's Messi, of course. You want Messi, you want Busquets. Anyone in MLS would die to have both of those players.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, they are getting older. I don't
And
think
for
they're gonna
them
have
to be your DPs too, that takes considerable amount of firepower out of your team. And you're relying
Yeah,
people
exactly.
like Allende, who's a U22, and normally, you don't really expect much. They're more so chips to be sold in the future, but you're relying on them to play meaningful minutes and be massive contributors. And I just don't think that that's a recipe
Mhm.
for success long term.
No, it's not. And well, the thing is, these moves were meant to be win Inter Miami a title now,
Yeah.
and then blow it up. And I feel like that was the gamble. I think like Beckham and company wanted because they want to make. They've always since Inter Miami's come into the league, they've wanted to make a huge statement,
Hmm.
um, and not be normal compared to other MLS clubs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very risky to just have Busquets and Messi as your GPs
And
when you need to
Alba.
build for the future, huh?
And Alba.
Oh, and yeah, and
Putting
Alba,
DP
no
money on
less.
the left back is not
No,
probably the smartest decision.
no, and then you have no room really to invest, and they're also huge contracts. Let's
Yeah.
not forget that those are huge contracts. Like
Hmm.
Messi, I mean, we're still going on about Messi's extension right now.
Yeah.
So you need central defenders though. I feel like you're not going to be able to win in the MLS playoffs if you're going to again have all three of these guys tired by the time because they played an extra month of games that other MLS clubs haven't,
Yeah.
right? And so they're in their 30s. They're already going to be worn out. My question is, do they rotate heavily for the next month and a half?
With who?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's the drawback of every MLS team, which is, it sounds great if you're Chelsea and you have 500 people on your bench. But when you're these MLS teams and you're basically down to like a 20-10 split of 20 senior players and then 10 academy guys who make the
Mm-hmm.
bench every game, it's hard to rotate unless you take some
Sacrifice.
pretty big gambles. And like they have, and I'll give them credit where credit's due. Like people like David Ruiz has stepped up big for them, and when he's not injured, but
Yeah,
it is like it's not a recipe for success. I think you saw was it last season? Um, they did that whole like worldwide tour in the preseason, and
right,
they played like legitimate minutes. And obviously, if you're going against Messi, people are going to actually try. And they're going to
right.
try to cut you down. So that's like another 5 games on top of that. And I think they learned their
Mm-hmm.
lesson. Was like, you know what? We're not going into this season going crazy with all these extra games. Suarez is like 500 years old, like
Yeah,
he's gonna get tired, and it's now like the halfway season pretty much, and I already see him huffing and puffing and like not being able to go on those legs anymore,
right.
and I think they're gonna flame out again. I don't think that they're trying to
Yeah,
go for the Supporters Shield. I think it was a nice statement that they did, but it's not a recipe for success to rely on Messi and a bunch of 20-year-olds.
right. And when you have teams like the Union and FC Cincinnati and Columbus, who are or in Nashville, let's not forget Nashville here. They are prioritizing their young players and
Hmm.
making sure they're balanced on
Yeah,
veteran youth splits for the most part.
yeah,
And you see that that's the recipe for success in MLS. I mean, we saw that when LAFC came in and, was really good. They had a lot of good mixture. They all had Gareth Bale, but you
yeah.
also had other good young players too to come in and Latif Blessing, when he flamed out in SKC,
Hmm.
and he came in and actually made an impact for y'all.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah,
think that's one thing for LAFC specifically, where it's just like John Thorrington has focused on MLS experience to fill out the
mhm.
rest of the roster. And Inter Miami just keeps bringing in Argentinian dudes and dudes who want to play with Messi, which is like, it's great. And like, I love the Fafa Pico pickup because he
Mhm.
has solid experience in MLS. He knows what the travel's like, he knows what to expect, but you're not giving him like meaningful minutes throughout the
Right.
season. So it's tough to get him into a situation where he can succeed and use his speed to kind of make up the difference that, Messi's leaving out there roam in the middle of the field.
Right. Yeah, and not only that, they've become the advertisement for the league, right? This
Yeah.
is, they want to be Barcelona when Messi was in his prime.
Mhm.
And well, can we ever say Messi's really lost his prime? Probably not. But
Yeah.
you know, they want to be the poster child of the MLS, and that's why they're wanting to get these huge names in.
Hmm.
But it's costing them because now they can't compete against the likes of Philadelphia and Cincinnati and Nashville and Columbus, who feel like they're on their stride right now.
Yeah.
So, what can they do in the transfer window? Probably get a couple extra defenders, maybe if they're cheap MLS defenders.
Yeah.
You can't expect to go get, I know for a hot minute, De Bruyne was thrown around for Miami, I think.
Yeah.
But
Come make
then,
$52,000 a year and live in South Florida.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's not going to do that.
Yeah.
And, you can't expect to go get, you know, a huge quality transfer like a wow moment that probably Miami wants to make. But if you can get a couple strong MLS defenders, you know, maybe an academy player that surprises you comes in and maybe not. I'd like to see them try to play down to other people's styles and try to dirty it up a bit instead of just attack, attack, attack.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Miami try to vary their style a bit,
Yeah. All right.
and that feels like they won't do that. But
Well, no, I mean it's Mascherano's world and we're all living in it. But enough
yeah,
about Inter Miami because everyone talks about them, so I try not to.
yes, fair, fair.
The ones that are remaining alive in Club World Cup, we have the reason why we are filming at 6:30 a.m. on a Wednesday is because the games kick off on Thursday. We have Palmeiras versus Chelsea, Fluminense versus Al Hilal, PSG versus Bayern, Real Madrid, and Dortmund. What do you kind of make of those games? Like a quick rundown of them, and then who do you think makes it all the way? I'm gonna jump on the grenade here already and say I picked PSG from the beginning. Champions Europe for a reason. I'm sticking with them.
Hmm. I mean, how can you not pick PSG?
Yeah,
Like, they've looked dominant. Like until they actually lose, which I mean we've seen. We've already seen Manchester City flop out, though they have their own issues.
yeah,
and they still look like they haven't solved the defensive issues from last season. But oh goodness, I want to say Fluminense can make it to the next round. I think they can do enough to beat Al Hilal and dirty it
Hmm.
up a bit because no one's expecting to play a CONCACAF style of play. Uh,
Yeah.
because I think that's what took Inter Milan by surprise because they were not expecting to get a team that was going to play dirty. Well, not dirty, but like make it a
Be a
grinded
little
out
bit more
game.
physical.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were not, and but Brazilians are used to that. They're used to grinding it out, making sure it's physical. And that's the Brazilian game. So I think Fluminense could do some damage, and I want to see them do some damage. But PSG Bayern, the Bayern game is going to be fantastic. I
Mm.
don't think. I mean, you've got two of the best teams in Europe competing against each other. Absolutely, they're going to have fireworks.
Yeah.
Now, how much of that's going to be, rotated teams or who actually is going to start as like your top 11? Who knows?
Yeah.
But that should be fun. I don't know what to expect of Dortmund. Honestly, I feel like you get either the good side or the bad.
I
Of
think
course,
we're
they're going to be
gonna
without.
sorry, I think we're gonna see a repeat of Champions League.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't see Mbappe can have his struggles and all that. It's still Madrid, you know?
Well, yeah. Well, Dortmund's not going to have Bellingham either, and he's been their best player, I think, of this tournament. Surprisingly, I didn't think he'd be as good as he has kind of been in this tournament. Though I don't know if that's going to play out when the season kicks off. But um, as one who covers the championship, Bellingham's progress fascinates me. Um, but yeah, I don't think we can discount Real Madrid or PSG.
Yeah. Well,
Uh, if you're gonna say, oh well, someone else is gonna win, until I see someone actually play somewhat competently against PSG, I don't think no one's gonna stop them.
yeah. All right. Let's switch over to MLS. Things have already started shifting for some teams, and as players like Olivier Giroud, Lorenzo Insigne, and Bernadeschi all departed their teams via the buyouts. First off, what do you make of those moves, and do you think that we'll see like a more active summer transfer window than we've seen in the past?
Oh goodness, I think y'all needed to go. I think Giroud needed to leave. He was,
He
I
needed
think,
to not come in the first place.
yeah, exactly. Why did he come anyway? But now that he was there, he needed to go. I
Yeah,
mean, he showed flashes last season, right? But like nothing to ever really say, okay, this was worth bringing him in for, right?
yeah,
Um, so I think that was a good move. Toronto, of course, they need to blow everything sky high
yeah.
because they're awful. Um, and Insigne is one of the big contracts on their payroll, so they had to get rid of him somehow.
One of the bigger
Um,
contracts in the league,
yeah,
just
exactly.
for him to fake injured the entire time and Bernadeschi to vape in locker rooms.
Yeah, yeah, and so I mean, it feels like all these were necessary buyouts that needed to happen. I don't know about if it's going to be a more active window though,
Mm,
because we're hearing rumors about like San Diego looking at a couple of guys. Mueller's potentially thought to be coming maybe to MLS.
yeah,
I don't know how real that's going to be because we've already seen like De Bruyne refuse to come, and how real that's going to be, who knows? But
yeah,
um, I mean, the rumors are fascinating.
yeah. It's
I
always fun to play the what if game.
yeah, but if it's actually going to happen, I don't know because I think a lot of the top teams are rather happy where they are right now, and I don't see why they shouldn't be.
Yeah,
But um, you know, there's always room for improvement for each team. Perspective. You know, you can always improve something. Yeah, I would say that the roster capacity is so limited and MLS that it's hard to have an exciting transfer window like it is in Europe.
Yeah.
And we always think that transfer windows are going to be exciting because the rumors and all that, and then nothing happens unless you have the one or two major signings, which I bet San Diego is probably going to have one, probably big signing, but that's about it. I wouldn't be shocked. But
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Tyler Heaps in preseason before anybody saw them even play a competitive game. And I was just like, I really love what you've done, especially with Anders Dreyer. Had so much respect for him and his game over in Europe. And I was like, oh, this is going to be like a sneaky signing. And I just kept talking about it. And he's like, yeah,
mm-hmm.
but Chucky Lozano too. I was like, yeah, but Dreyer, like, let's talk about him. And he's been on a tear, and in Tyler Heaps we
Yeah,
trust. Um, but you talked about Toronto, and obviously they have a lot of room to make improvements. So I'll outline a team that I think could probably be active, and then we'll just switch on and off if that's cool with you. Through the club roster profiles, I'm not looking at like, hey, this person could sign a third string left winger. More so like DPs that could make a splash. Toronto, as I said, they shipped the Italians off. They need a reload. Robin Fraser needs to be given more help. I truly believe that he's a good coach. I love the homecoming that he's coming back to Toronto. Ownership is in flux, though. They're in the midst of
yeah,
selling to what is it? I forget what the last name is, but everything is consolidated in Toronto. So will they give them that blank checkbook to go out there and spend a bunch of money on aging players? Probably not. But I do think that Robin Fraser can mold young talent, and at least getting some U22s in there will make a big difference. And I think the argument there is just let's get these guys in the summer so that we have 6 months under our belt before we start the next season and go harder in 2026.
right, for sure. Yeah. One of the ones I'm keeping an eye on is Sporting KC.
Okay.
I feel like they've been waiting for the summer transfer window to make their splash signing. They've
Yeah.
been they've been promising they're going to make a splash signing. Now, they've of course they saved a lot of money by cutting Polito, and Russell's gone. They're really stripping down the old wood and trying to
Yeah.
build it up a new one, and they're doing a rather impressive job of doing it.
Insane.
Honestly,
Yeah.
like Carrie Zavagnin has been much better than I anticipated.
Yeah.
The back office has been doing great. I feel like that they're actually making progress for the first time in a couple of years. And I feel like they could go get a good DP. Whether it be a defender, they probably need to shore up the defense a little bit. Though that's been actually rather solid comparatively, like the last couple of years under
Yeah.
for me's. But I wouldn't also be shocked if they went and got a splash attacker either.
Hmm.
You know, like get they have these DP spots open for a reason. Um, Now they need to use them,
Hmm.
and I feel like SKC, if they want to make a playoff push, and it feels like they actually can make a playoff push now, they need to have something that can put them over the top and actually make them compete.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean,
mm,
they kind of just remain stagnant under Peter Vermees, and I like you said, I think that they're surprising even themselves with how good they're doing. Columbus is one that I have on my board. Still don't really have a real number nine. Nancy might not need one, but I think they're much better off with someone like Kucho up top, if only they had
right,
him.
I still don't get why they let him go. Honestly,
The money, money,
yeah,
money. So I could see them going for a number nine to try to push higher up the table, maybe get some home games, and yeah, I mean, I believe in, well, for Nancy, he's shown nothing but, being a top professional and a great head coach, and his players love playing for him. But there's like a certain level that you need to cross over where it's, hey, the scrappy group of, academy kids playing with Darlington Nagby as a DP for some reason, uh, into, hey, let's compete for some more hardware.
Right.
Um, yeah. What's your next team?
I would say, okay, they might not actually do anything because they spent so much money already. Atlanta United.
I don't think the GDP of Atlanta can take another DP signing.
No, they probably couldn't, but they've been so aggressive and it's flopped miserably.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Like, do they do another signing to change anything? Maybe. I doubt it because, again, like I said, they spent so much money. But, I would think that it's a possibility. You
Mhm.
know, another one is, I'll get to it in a minute. It's your turn.
Yeah, one that I have is a semi-rival, I guess you would call it. Just rivals of the South who both play in NFL stadiums, which is Charlotte. We
Yeah.
we have basically like 3 weeks now of will they, won't they ship off Ajiman to Derby. And, he's making very little money, so there's not like you're gonna replace him with somebody who's gonna equal his amount of production. But they still have a DP spot open, Zoran Cornetta, he's not
Hmm.
content seeing where things are, and he likes to progress the situation. I think the Pep BL deal to keep him on TAM and extend his loan again, I said it last week when it came out, it's just like they can't just keep getting away with this, right? Like somebody's gonna be like, eventually you're gonna have to pay me, right? But
Right.
yeah, they got the Zaha loan deal, and it started out strong, and I was very excited. I took him in a lot of my Golden Boot drafts, and it's kind of fizzled out a bit.
Yeah.
It would be good to see them make a big swing, especially for a number nine up top. I think trying to match Ajiman's size
Hmm.
would be a good way to go about, like trying to handle those in swingers and keep hold up play.
For
Um,
sure.
and Tepper's not afraid of opening up the checkbook. He's shown that time and time again, even if Zoran just wants to bring in people on loan.
Yeah. Yeah. And if he could do that with the Panthers, that might actually change something a little bit
Yeah,
more. But yeah, I mean, Charlotte is fascinating to me because they want to compete, and that you can tell, and they're trying to
yeah,
do it. They're trying to do it aggressively, but also smartly, which I can appreciate. Um, yeah, Ajiman to Derby would be huge,
yeah,
and I don't think they can afford to lose. It reminds me of the Latte Loth to Atlanta situation in the transfer in the winter
yeah,
because Burrow were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and until the last possible minute to do it. And then of course they go sign Ian Nacho, and that failed miserably.
hmm
So Charlotte don't want to do that.
yeah.
Um, and I
And they
feel
don't
like
have to. He's under
no, they
contract.
don't have to.
Yeah,
No,
he can
the
be
summer
mad,
transfer.
but he can be mad playing in Charlotte.
Yeah, yeah, and at least you're competing still in a league that most teams should be able to compete in the playoffs.
Yeah,
So, you know, and I think that could be it would be huge, huge, not just for like the club, but like the fan base as well to see actual progress besides just staying about the same like they have. So,
yeah. Do you have one more that you could see making a run in the transfer window?
I think the obvious one's just San Diego,
Yeah,
um, because it feels like they want to compete. They want to get past Vancouver, who has been fantastic.
yeah,
Vancouver is also probably one you could put in that list as well.
yeah,
Um, but they they had the huge couple of wins they've had recently. They want to make sure that they can actually win the West. It feels like their target is winning the West at this point.
yeah.
So if they want to do that, it feels like they might want to get one extra signing in before the transfer window closes. And San Diego's shown they will go after the big names,
Yeah.
or some type of European name.
Yeah.
So, I could absolutely see San Diego being that. And they want to, they're trying to copy Miami, but in a smarter way, I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's just me.
Yeah. So my last one would be NYCFC. I think it's only Thiago Martins as their current DP, which I don't think you should be putting your DP money into a 30-year-old center back who hasn't really delivered. But
Yeah.
Pascal Janssen has shown the ability to mold young talent. I'd love to see the City connection come through for once. Obviously, De Bruyne, he was rumored for a little bit along with San Diego, and now he's sipping Aperol spritzes in Napoli. And then,
Yeah.
real quick, before I have to head out, biggest surprise of the season, and then biggest disappointment from you.
Biggest surprise is probably how good Vancouver's been.
Yeah.
Oh, and also Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did we really expect Nashville to be top 4 in the East?
I didn't expect Surge to be leading the Golden Boot race.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I thought Latte Loth would.
Yeah.
No, it's Surge. And good for him, honestly, because he hasn't shown that potential until now. And I think now that he is showing it, Nashville has taken off because they actually have an extra goal scoring threat besides Hani Mukhtar. But yeah, Nashville and Vancouver feel like the biggest surprises. SKC also making a charge for playoffs is kind of surprising as well.
Yeah, and I think we both can agree that Galaxy biggest disappointment.
That and Atlanta.
Yeah, well, with the amount of money that they shelled out, yeah. But yeah, that should just about do it. I have to get my kids ready for school. Thank you again for spending some time with me here on Underway very early in the morning. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find the PitchGrid podcast on all social medias, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. And then, of course, we're on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and Facebook, or X and Facebook. Yeah. But thanks so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. It was fun to chat all we could. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on, and check out PitchGrid Pod.
Underway has been brought to you by 818 Productions. Any use of Underway, either acquired through podcast or video format that is captured by a third party with proper credentials, requires the direct written consent of 818 Productions and must be used in compliance with all requirements and restrictions stated therein.